Welcome to the Iron and Intention podcast, where strategy and purpose drives performance. Around here, we believe the way you interpret pressure determines how you perform under it. How you see your life shapes how you move through it. Today's conversation is about bridging that internal and external work, because you can't out-discipline a misaligned perspective. My guest today is Shelbie Huffman. Shelbie is a speaker, coach, and perspective consultant who helps people shift the way they see their lives. As the creator of the SELF method, she teaches a simple but powerful process for moving out of emotional reactivity and into clarity, self-trust, and intentional action. Her work is rooted in lived experience. After years of navigating personal challenges, relationships, and the demands of motherhood, Shelbie developed a deep understanding of how perspective shapes everything, from the way we show up to the outcomes we create. Today, she uses that insight to guide others towards a more aligned, grounded, and authentic life. Shelbie, welcome to Iron and Intention podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Shelbie, typically we have first responders, leaders inside that world, but I think that today we're venturing out with you because I think you have some really big information to offer that will not only help the first responders and veterans and emergency managers, but really anybody who tunes into this. So we're super excited to have you. Let's get busy.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and just believing in my work. I believe in my work so much. I really don't even feel like it's work. I feel like it is the anchor that I have been looking for my entire life. I think that it's interesting how we're born into the world inherently looking for something to guide us. And for me to find out that that thing that we are looking for to grasp a hold of is within us, and we can find it by connecting to ourselves. And so thank you so much for just giving me this opportunity to speak about it.
Well, it's great having you. So let's jump into the questions.
Yes.
So when you hear the word perspective, what does that actually mean in real life? Not some academic theory. For you, what's that mean?
So for me, like really understanding the word perspective, it took me a little bit because there is a difference between having a perspective and having an opinion, right? And so when I recognized and realized that I have complete control of my perspective, my life completely altered. Your perspective in layman's terms is how you interpret the world around you and how you interpret an individual experience, even if it's a shared experience with other people.
So can you share a moment where changing your perspective changed the outcome of something, even though the situation didn't really change, but it did change the outcome?
Well, okay, I think to go into that, you have to understand that you are your common denominator in every experience of your life, right? And so I was really having this difficult experience through counseling because I was taking all of my problems to the counselor and I'm like, help me fix my problems, like help me fix these people. And I just had this moment of just like this revelation where I'm the common denominator here. And so I don't have one individual perspective on like experience of perspective, but I do have a, what's the word that I'm looking for? I do have a relational based experience that altered everything, and that's motherhood, right? But also wifehood. Anytime that I was in any sort of interpersonal relationship that was difficult, I had this awareness around I am the common denominator here. All of these problems look different on the surface, but they're triggering the same emotion within me. And so once I realized that I could just observe the feeling that I was having, the thought that I was having, and then the behavior that came after that, everything changed for me. And that goes opposite also. So, say my kids are having a really hard time. I can just observe their behavior without labeling them. I can label it like this person is throwing a fit without assuming that they are the problem. The problem is the problem, right? The emotion is the emotion, and the thought process around it is essentially the perspective that I have. And so if I am labeling this child as a problem child, I am only going to see problems, right? But if I am labeling this child as my child who needs me in this moment, my perspective can completely alter. And that goes for interpersonal relationships, my marriage, my jobs, my friendships. Your perspective is the lens that you view the world.
Excellent. So how do you recognize when you're reacting versus responding?
Well, I think that with once you're in reactive mode, you really don't have a lot of control. And so I'm going to give you this exercise. I want you to do it with me, okay?
Okay.
I want you to say hi to yourself, but I want you to say it inside of your mind. Okay, did you do
Okay.
it?
I did.
Okay. So which one are you? Are you the one that said it or are you the one that heard it?
Ooh, I don't know. I think I was both.
You will essentially, you are the consciousness that observed it, right? And so if we can get really good at labeling what's going on in front of us, and I know that you said that you work a lot with first responders or people who are on the front line, right? Like these are really triggering experiences, much like motherhood. Motherhood is a very triggering experience. Marriage is a very triggering experience because essentially you are sharing your experience with someone else. So you're having your own individual experience, they're having their own individual experience. And then there's this shared experience where we are all experiencing a different perspective, how you view something, perception, how you view someone. And so let's go back to these frontline people. There's something traumatic happening, right? And their experience is in their name, I'm going to respond. It's my job to jump in and save. If they are filtering that through the perspective of pressure, it's up to me to save them, then essentially they are not the consciousness observing it. All of that pressure is put on them. And so, my encouragement to people, whether they are on the front lines trying to save someone's life or they are in their kitchen trying to make it through a fit that's being thrown or a fight in a marriage, just pausing and remembering that you are the consciousness that is observing this experience. You're sharing this experience with someone else and you always have a choice. And so what that does is it slows you down and it reminds you that you have choices, right? And so frontline people like first responders, they're going to want to stay in that reactivity because they're there to save. They're there to react based on what they are seeing, right? But if you are in motherhood and you are meeting that chaos with more chaos, it's just like chaos builds chaos, builds chaos, builds chaos, right? And so emotional regulation comes in through the consciousness that you are, not the thought that you're having, and also not the thought that you are hearing.
So perspective then isn't passive.
No.
It's a filter that everything runs through.
Correct. Yes. And also, I think that it's so helpful to not put pressure on yourself that you have to get this immediately. A lot of times people think healing or becoming more responsive versus reactive is something that once you have the awareness of that, it's now your job to be good at that. That's not the case. It takes a lot of time. And I work with my clients a lot on this and myself. I consider myself because I am the consciousness observing this experience that I am having as a human being. So I have to have a lot of compassion with myself because if not, my ego swoop in and be like, "Oh, Shelby, you teach people to do this, but you can't even keep it together while your kids are throwing a fit." I'm a human being, right? And so I've got to actively be working through this with myself. And so I think that it's so important to recognize and realize that awareness is your number one key, right? So, what am I feeling? What am I thinking about what I'm feeling? And how am I showing up in the world? That's number one, awareness. Number two is what is the intention behind this awareness? What is the intention behind this behavior? So I like to reference my kids because it's the main experience that I have, or my marriages, right? Well, I have had two, but the current marriage that I'm in right now, I'm much better at being married this time than I was the first time. But in my lived experience, what I really try to remind myself and be compassionate with myself around is that awareness, but also that intention. So if my kids are yelling, they're having a hard time, I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed, and I just want it to stop. If I yell, I allow myself, if I really want to yell, if I feel like that is the only thing that I can do to help my nervous system regulate, I will allow myself to yell, but with the awareness of the intention behind it. And the intention behind it, whether I am okay with it or not, or I like it or not, is to scare my children. That is the intention behind it. Because if they are loud and I am louder, it's going to stop it. Right. And so then I have awareness around that intention that is completely contradictive to the standard I have set as a mother. The standard I have set as a mother is I am a safe place for you. And so if I am going to yell, I am going to do it with two key components, awareness and also understanding of my intention. 90% of the time, by the time I get to that spot where I'm like, you do you, girl, and that's my ego, right? That's like, I'm going to control this situation. Once I have like came into this awareness, and this is all happening synergistically at the same time. And this is why I say it's so important to give yourself grace and time to get good at this through awareness. Like, oh, my kids are yelling. I want to yell. Okay. If I yell, though, it's going to scare them. That in and in itself is removing you and separating you from your reaction. It's labeling the problem, which is the yelling, not the kids, right? It's also labeling your reaction, your behavior. So it's separating you from it. Because a lot of times what happens is we let our ego run, right? Like we blow up, we act in a way that we're not proud of, and then immediately we feel guilty for that, right? And so then it's our shame and our ego dancing back and forth when in reality we are neither of those two things. We are the consciousness observing it. And so it happens through integration, happens through awareness and awareness of intention. Once you bring those to light, once you just let them free through thought and you just observe your thought, right? You said hi to yourself. So you have the awareness that you can observe your thought, allowing yourself to behave in a standard that you had set for yourself when you are not dysregulated is so much easier to grab onto when you have awareness and awareness of intention.
So, as somebody who has coached people in the fitness arena, what does that external strength plus internal awareness look like on a hard day?
I think it's important to know again, I talk a lot about intention and I talk a lot about compassion for yourself. So I haven't always been this way, right? Like if you imagine your life as a pendulum swing, it's so important to ride both sides of the pendulum swing so you can find balance in the middle, right? So for me, for a long time, especially when I was big into the fitness world, I could not comprehend what people were saying when they wanted to quit. I was compassionate towards them, but that compassion was not available for me because it was like my standard is high, my expectation is high. We don't stop, we don't push, or we push, we do not quit. And a lot of that comes from my upbringing. We're going to be the best and we're going to show up always. It doesn't matter if you're tired. If you're tired, you're lazy. And so I had all of this backing. And so what is different about me now is understanding that self care is meeting yourself where you're at with the reality of what's really going on with you. So, say I decide I'm going to work out at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. I get a terrible night's sleep. My kids are up all night. My alarm goes off and I am exhausted. What is not self care is me pushing myself to do it anyway, right? What is self care is acknowledgement of I am exhausted. This would not be good for my body. So today I'm going to choose to turn that alarm off and I'm going to recommit to myself to find time later. Or if I can't, show up again tomorrow. It's again goes back to the intention, right? So pre Shelby, who had awareness, would have been like, nope, self care means putting yourself first, even when you're exhausted, even when you're tired, even if you don't want to, you do. And so it goes back to that intention of meeting yourself right where you're at with awareness. Because if that alarm goes off and I got great sleep the night before, and I'm just like, I don't really feel like working out today. That is again completely contradictory to the standard and the commitment that I have made to myself. This is where we rely on motivation a lot. Like when we first start a workout routine, we're so excited. We're like, okay, I'm doing it. And we do it really, really great for a really long time until life hits us and we just don't feel like it. And then what happens is we don't. And then we shame ourselves, we judge ourselves. See, I told you you're going to fail anyway. That is our ego attacking us, right? Judging us, doing exactly what we fear from the outside world to ourselves. And then the story we tell ourselves about that is you shouldn't have tried anyway. Guilt kicks in, our shame takes over. Why even try? So it's just these two separate feedback loops that can be completely avoided with awareness of your situation that you are in. Am I tired? Did I get enough sleep? If the answer is, am I awake and did I get enough sleep? If the answer is yes, then the standard for myself is I'm going to get up because this is the commitment that I made. That is self care. If I didn't get enough sleep and my alarm goes off, the commitment that I'm making to myself is to sleep because taking care of myself looks like meeting myself right where I'm at, but having a plan and intention to show up for myself later. And so for me personally, it goes back to that intention.
Where do people get it wrong? Strong body and unled emotions.
But I don't necessarily subscribe to right and wrong because I think that right and wrong are perspective based. So let me tell you a little story, okay? I want to tell you about this guy that I don't know him. This is hypothetical. But I know this guy, he killed somebody. Is he good or bad?
It's all in perspective. Why did he kill him?
Correct, right? And so you're already on that path because you're curious, right? And so when it comes to separating, because if I told you I know this guy, he killed someone because he was saving his wife and child, you would be like, oh my gosh, hero, right? But if I only gave you the little bit of context right at the top, a lot of times, most people, they assume that based on the little information that they have, it is right or wrong based on their belief systems, good or bad based on their belief system. Our belief system is a loop that we run on based on experiences that we've had prior to. It completely pulls us out of the present moment that we are in. And so I think, again, you'll notice this about me: awareness and intention. Awareness and intention. It always all goes back to that. And then the choice that we make with that awareness and with that intentions. When it comes to people who are strong bodied, but that internal dialogue is not necessarily kind, it might be kind to everybody else, but not kind to them. My first thought is, oh, that's not your internal dialogue. Somebody taught you that. And I know that because this used to be me. Right. I was somebody who was very strong bodied. The internal dialogue, the internal make was not very strong. Actually, it was very weak, but my ego would never let you know that. And so I think, again, when it comes to finding a balance of that strong body and that strong internal system, it comes to the relationship that they have with each other. If you are only going to the gym, if you are only working out because you're trying to get to status quo, or you're trying to like put on this show, or you're running, this is a big one for me. If you are using it to run from something, everything internally is going to eventually catch up with you externally. You cannot outwork the stories that you have in your head. You cannot outwork the trauma that is in your body, right? So that's why people typically who work out all of the time or are super driven, they're that way until they're not. They completely go off the deep end. That's because their visceral response, their body is like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so blending those two sounds a lot like, how can I meet you right where you're at in the environment that you're already in the routine that you're already in? If that's working out 5 times a day, 5 times a week, 7 times a week, where we really operate under pressure, okay, we'll do that. But we're going to do that with the awareness that you're only going because you feel like you have to. So much happens in that internal dialogue when you just allow that or that other voice to have a little bit of the floor.
So let's talk discipline. How do you define discipline? Because for me, I'm probably a little guilty of not getting enough sleep yet getting up and going, because I believe for me consistency trumps at least my perspective. And I think discipline really helps guide our lives.
For sure.
But how do you define discipline in a way that doesn't turn it into self-punishment?
I think it's so important, especially when it comes to things like consistency or discipline, motivation, routine, rigidity, like being super rigid. I think that it's so important to identify what those experiences provide for you, again, on a visceral level, but also on, on an emotional and mental level as far as safety is concerned. So for you, when you tell your story about yourself, a story about discipline, what is that story going in your mind? Why does discipline make you feel safe?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that
Sure,
just
you
off the
could.
top of my head.
You could, but here's the thing, and this is where, and you're just not there yet, and that's okay. At my work, my boss always laughs at me because he'll like say something that's changing, and he'll be like, "Oh, I don't know about that," and I'm like, "Well, we're not there yet." I always yet follow, because here's the difference between toxic positivity and just unwavering optimism. When it's an external world or an internal world, when we recognize that every experience that we ever have, whether that be internal or external, is just us trying to get an emotional need met. So for you, consistency is probably connected a little bit to your worth. Like, I am somebody who tries hard, right? And so we create these personas, and persona is not a bad thing. Ego is not a bad thing. Our confidence comes from these two experiences that we have. But the precursor to true confidence, self security, is self assurance. Like, I like myself and I'm okay with myself when I'm not perfect. And so, if that story loop that you're telling yourself about consistency or about staying disciplined is connected to your performance, then you're never going to not let yourself perform. But if you're able to pull it back just a little bit and remind yourself, like, hey, I'm good even when I'm not performing. I'm good even if discipline looks like resting, then you'll start to allow yourself a little bit of flexibility. But a lot of times people confuse flexibility with lazy, not because they're the two, two and the same, but because the way that we perceive flexibility or going easy on ourselves is looped through a feedback loop. And especially in your generation, you're a little bit older than I am, right?
Thank
You
you.
per
Thanks for reminding
oh,
me.
yeah, of course, you show up to perform, right? Because that is what that generation that's what they had to do. My dad is from that generation. And so somebody from my generation judging someone from your generation who only knows how to operate through that, trying to get somebody to change because you think that they're wrong, or trying to get somebody to change even if good intent, like this would be more helpful for you. That would be like trying to tell a little tiny baby who's on the floor, like doing tummy time, to get up and walk. There's so many steps between walking and tummy time. And those steps are awareness, right?
Mhm.
Intention, and then also compassion. Why am I this way? Just curiosity around what those consistent effort that you have, what that story is that provides safety for you.
You brought up something earlier about grace. And I
Yes.
think that's probably as I've gotten older, I have learned that I tend to give others grace much quicker than I give it to myself.
Mhm.
So I think that's so important that you talked about grace. I've now learned I this morning I had a terrible workout.
Mhm.
I was there for 70 minutes. My strength was down, my intensity was down. But you know what? That's okay because that's just one workout out of how many more do I have left?
Correct.
And so I think that's where people get not only physical fitness, but mental fitness. They get jacked up in that because once they have something bad, it starts leading to that spiral down.
Right.
How how can they stay out of that loop of, "Yeah, I had a bad workout or I had a bad day. I'm not perfect yet." How can they keep from spiraling downward? Is there something they can do in terms of changing their perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I think that you said it yourself, like goes back to separation and curiosity. So, like you, I've had times where like my workouts, they just aren't the same. But for me, I think the most relatable experience that I have consistently for myself isn't necessarily with my workout, although this does apply. It's the way that I show up as a wife and a mom, right? So that mental load, the dishes, the appointments, the schedules, keeping everything so tidy. So for me, it is identification of what am I telling myself about my worth and my performance as a mother, as a human being, as a wife, all of these things that is connected to what I am doing. And so for you, or for somebody who might be working out, where you can quickly flip your perspective is looking at your workout for what it was. One, it was a workout. Label it. It was a workout, right? And so if it was a great workout or if it was a terrible workout, it was still a workout. And so asking yourself why it matters to you, because it's going to be different for you than it is to me, for it to be either or, right? When in reality it is just this. It is the workout. For me in my house, it's the home. Like what about my home being clean and put together creates safety for me or creates validation? I think it's important to know what your fears are rooted in those stories that you tell yourself about the experiences that you have, and also not having this expectation that you're not going to have an emotion about it. So if you have the bad workout, which today that you did, what was the story? What were you telling yourself about that workout?
You know, I don't know really, other than thinking, "Hey, there's tomorrow. I'll have tomorrow. This is just a blip in the radar. Did I get enough calories yesterday to support, my muscle glycogen stores that helps me push forward?" I was really just trying to analyze it from a physical perspective, but I also on the mental side, I was like, "Hey, whatever. It's a Saturday. I'm here. I'll be in the gym again tomorrow, and tomorrow will be a better day."
So what I am hearing you say is your experience, your emotional experience, because you had an emotional reaction to that, which was kind of like, I'm not sure what the actual emotion was, but kind of more of like a downcast emotion. What I am hearing you say is, long as there is a valid reason, or as long as there is a way for me to make it up, then it is okay for me to feel this way. Have you ever just woke up and you're like, oh, today's like, oh. I'm not feeling that great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of
Yep.
course, right? And then what do you tell yourself? Well, come on, you got to get together. Today's a good day to have a good day. The
Mhm.
reality is sometimes we just feel bull. Sometimes we feel happy for no reason. Sometimes we just feel things because what is the only thing that every human being has in common? Every human being has these. What are they?
Emotions.
Emotions, and we're born with them, right? And so a little tiny baby, my 3-year-old in the other room right now, he has every emotion that I have in his body right now. That is insane when you think about that, right? And an emotion only lasts 90 seconds, literally. This is research based. It only lasts 90 seconds. When I learned this, I felt triggered, truthfully, because I'm like, 90, I'm pissed off all day sometimes. What do you mean 90 seconds? But it's the story loop that we are telling ourselves, we're re-triggering ourselves, right? And so I'm sure that you thought about that workout more than one occasion after you left the workout, right? And I know that's true because even when you access that story now, your presentation, the way that your voice, the cadence in your voice was kind of like, "It wasn't that great." And so that tells me that that story loop is still connected to that emotion. And there's a really good exercise that you can use in real time, regardless of your situation, when you feel some sort of like visceral in your body, mental in your mind, right? Emotional in your reaction. And so anytime you are having any of those experiences, you can do one thing. You can stop. You can ask yourself, what am I feeling? I'm feeling down. What am I thinking? What am I telling myself about what I'm feeling? And then how am I showing up because of that? Like my kids do this all of the time. They're mad. They don't like what I've told them. So they're going to mope. Their head's gonna be down, they're gonna be, down. That's because they want me to acknowledge what's going on with them, and that's my job. I'm their mom. It's my job to help them express their emotions. It's my job to help them regulate their emotions, but I behave the same way. I had this experience this morning with my husband at the gym. He hurt my feelings on the way to the gym. This is a true story. I went into the bathroom and I had like, well, I'm not gonna look at him. Like I wanted him to know that I was mad. And so I had to like have this conversation with myself and ask myself, what need are you wanting him to meet? And are you willing to meet that need yourself? For me, in that moment, I just wanted him to agree with me. And he wasn't going to do that. He already told me he didn't agree with me. And so I had this awareness of choice, right? My behavior was trying to get something from him that I could give myself, which was intention. So, you know what I did? I sat in the bathroom stall and I cried like a baby for like 2 minutes because my feelings were hurt. And then I was like, okay, are you feeling better? I checked in with myself. I parented myself. And a lot of times with reparenting ourselves, we think that that means correcting ourselves. Your workout, you should have pushed harder. You should have ate more calories. You would have had a better workout had you taken better care of yourself prior to. Reparenting ourselves is I feel what you're feeling. You're good to feel it. You can cry about it. You can throw a fit about it. You can do whatever you need to do about it. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to justify your behavior, right? And we're not going to get caught in that story loop. Oh, your husband's terrible because he didn't agree with you. Oh, your workout was terrible because you didn't eat enough. Nope. I'm separating myself from the thought. You feel the feelings, girl. I do this with myself all the time. You feel the feelings, Shelb. I can feel them. I can handle them. But then we're going to choose. Do we want to go on about our day or do we want to have a crappy day? And like 90% of the time, I'm like, okay, I'm good now.
Awesome.
Yes.
So, what is there any one behavior that you can share with our listeners that helps to build that self-trust and one that would quietly erode that self-trust?
Yeah, I mean, and I wouldn't even say that it's a behavior as much as it is an internal dialogue. Judgment, I guess that's a behavior. We can be judgmental. Typically, judgment is indicative of your ego, and typically inadequacy is indicative of your shame. And so, I think your awareness around both when you show up, like the conversation that you're having in your mind or even with someone else, right? So if you get home from work and your wife is like running around, you can tell she's not in a great mood, right? And you immediately start trying to diagnose that experience based on something that you have done wrong. You can stop yourself in that moment and you can start an internal dialogue with yourself that is real, that is authentic, that validates your experience. My wife is off. Something feels wrong and I'm feeling responsible. I'm feeling like I need to do something to change this. You can regulate yourself in real time by telling yourself, we can do something else. We can ask her if something is wrong. We can do something else. We can go outside if we need to. We can remove ourselves from this situation. Just having that awareness and giving yourself choice around the situations that you are having will help you not get into that feedback loop, will help you not latch on to the ego or to the shame.
So let's talk about leading yourself to clarity.
Yes.
What does self leadership look like when life feels unclear?
Well, I think that it can look different. I think that it starts with self-trust, right? And so to be led by someone, you have to trust them. And so there is a framework that I love. It is called IFS, Internal Family System. And what that does is that breaks down the parts inside of us. When I learned about IFS, it completely revolutionized my life. And so for recognizing and realizing that there are triggered parts of me all of the time, regardless of the situations that I'm in. Sometimes they're good triggers, sometimes they're bad triggers, sometimes they're scary triggers, sometimes they're exciting triggers. But recognizing that there are parts of me experiencing this individual experience at all times. And for me to operate in a place of stability from a place of self trust, from a place of self leadership, it is acknowledging those parts of me without judging them. And what that might look like is I'm noticing you're feeling insecure. This happens to me a lot because when I was younger, I grew up in a very toxic environment where it was just chaotic, right? And people yelled at each other and people talked about each other. And so anytime somebody's behavior is off with me, there is a part of me that is triggered and they don't like me. They're talking about me. And so what I do when I feel that part of me, and notice I say part of me, not all of me, but part of me, I notice that feeling and I label it. Hey, Shelb, you're feeling insecure. And then I will ask myself, why are you feeling insecure? And then I'll let her go. I will let her run, like, and she'll be like, well, they're talking about me. They're looking at me weird. Their body language is off. Something is off. And I will confirm her reality, right? I will say, I see that too, because I am noticing that too, but we haven't seen them in a really long time. And you're kind and you have good intention. And there is nothing in my awareness that I can think of that would warrant them to treat you that way. And so if they are directly rude to you, and I separate myself and I talk to myself like this. And a lot of times people are like, who are you talking to? I'm like, oh, I'm just talking to myself. Yeah, I will tell myself, like, if they approach you and they are passive with you, I will speak up for you. I will say, your behavior is different with me now than it was yesterday. Is there something that I'm missing? And so in that, that's me building self-trust with myself. I see you, I hear you. I hear the response you want me to give. I'm not willing to do that right now because based on the facts, there's nothing warranted here for us to react in a way that fuels that insecurity, that fuels that story. But if it does happen and there is something that we can confirm and we can stand on, I will speak up for you. That regulates me in real time. It builds self-trust because if I just told that part of me that is feeling that's seeing that real experience, if I just nope, it's not about you. Just go to this. What that's gonna happen is my husband's gonna come home in a couple of weeks and he's gonna have had a bad day and be quiet and I'm immediately going to think he wants a divorce because there's a visceral response that happens when that part of us can't take it anymore. That's why people blow up, right? Like, have you ever seen, like, at work, whether it be at work and a boss is really, really overwhelmed and this guy just, broke the printer? Like, it's not that big of a deal, but the boss is like, oh my God, we don't have the money for that. And they're just blowing up at that. That is because all of these minute moments have happened that have triggered that you don't appreciate me. You don't see how much it costs. You don't see, and he hasn't allowed space for that part of him that is trying to prove himself as a boss to just exist. He just pushes it to the side. And then the ego is like, oh no, you're going to hear me and he's going to hear all of me. And so just giving space to that story while validating the feeling without validating or justifying the story, game changer when it comes to building self trust, which is the precursor to self leadership.
So last weekend, I attended a leadership conference in Kansas City, and one of the things that one of the speakers said really resonated with me, and that is certain uncertainty. So when you are looking to do something new, when you're going out on a limb, so to speak, there's always a level of certain uncertainty. You just don't know what's going to happen. Life is very uncertain, especially in my career field. You don't know what's going to happen from moment to moment. How do you move forward without certainty, but still have clarity?
Well, again, it goes back to your intention, right? And so clarity and certainty are actually completely different experiences. You don't get certainty until after you experience something. That's just the truth, right? You can try to predict what will happen based on experiences that you've already had, but the experience that you're having in the present moment does not become certain until after you've already experienced it. It's very similar to confidence. I feel like confidence and certainty are very connected in my mind anyway. People think they'll see me and they're like, "Oh, you're so confident." No, I just go. I just go because it's based on my trust within myself, right? And so confidence actually comes after you do the hard thing. Courage is what gets you to do the hard thing. Confidence comes after, right? But courage and confidence kind of go hand in hand, just like certainty and confidence go hand in hand. And so the bridge, I think, there is that self trust. And the way that you go, regardless of the certainty or the uncertainty, is the self trust. Regardless of what happens, we're going to get through this. And trusting yourself is the right? And so I can't be certain that this is going to work out the way that we think that it's going to work out. But I also can be certain that me and you are going together. And me and you are those parts, right? That regardless of what comes out on the other side of this, whether it's massive success or massive destruction, I've been with you since the very beginning. I came in with you, I'm going out with you. And so I am certain that we can get through this. And so certainty for me is only an internal experience, never external.
Gotcha. Good advice. What's one daily practice that you can give to our audience who are mostly first responders and in leadership roles? What's one piece of advice in terms of a daily practice that helps keep you aligned when life feels very heavy?
Well, I was just kind of referencing my notes. I made a few of them because I talk a lot. I'm sure you've been able to see that. When it comes to a daily practice, I would love to give you just cookie cutter advice of check in with yourself. But I think a lot of times people don't know what that means. And so for me, I think that the thing that really changed everything for me and could potentially change everything for anyone listening, regardless of the life that they have, the experience that they're having, is acknowledgement of self, right? And so it's like a lot of times we get in these really difficult experiences, especially the people that you are working with, especially your experience, right? So, like, you're meeting people a lot of times on their absolute worst day. You know what I mean? And that's hard. That's hard to grapple with because you're immediately backburnering yourself, which is it's part of the job. And I think that especially the people that you work with and you kind of know that that's going to be your experience going into this. But something that I think would be so helpful and is so helpful with me just in motherhood, where people are just like always needing me. I'm like, "Oh my God, my eyes open." It's like, "Can you give me some snacks?" Like, "Oh my God, it's not even 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning." I think just acknowledgement of self. So the first thing that I do for myself every morning, I always say, "Hi, Shelby," inside of my mind. I'm like, "Hey, girl. Hey, Shelb. Good morning." I just acknowledge myself. And I try very, very hard to set the internal dialogue like I want to set the day. That's not rigidity. That's not routine. And for me, that's choosing myself first. And so I will do something simple like I will look in the mirror and I will say hello to myself. Before my eyes even open, I will acknowledge my presence, right? I will go to the bathroom, I will brush my teeth, I will do something for myself in terms of acknowledgement of self. Like, you do exist. It's a really simple, and people, I think that things like routines or practice or framework, like that can be really helpful, and that is really helpful when you get a little further down the line, right? But when you're fighting for your life and you've only ever put everyone else before it will blow your mind just saying good morning to yourself, just acknowledging your existence within the experience that you are having instead of putting all of your focus on everyone else.
So you've given me something new to add to my morning habit. I'm a big habit guy. And so
Oh, good.
the first thing I do is when I get up, as soon as my feet hit the floor, I express one gratitude. And that gratitude is the same every morning. Man, I get another day. But now I'm going to
Yeah.
have to say hi to myself first. And then I'm going to
Yeah.
have to express my gratitude. So I'm going to try that first thing tomorrow. So thank you.
Yes. And so You're welcome. And I think it's important too to, find like a youthfulness in it. And so a lot of times for me, like people, especially in the beginning of my life, they called me Shelbs or, like I'll say like, hey, Shelbs or hey, girl, just really pretending. Do you have children?
I do. I do. They're
Okay.
they're
So like I
they're
like put on
mid-30s, so they're not, like, little anymore.
but they yeah, but they were, and you remember what
Right.
they were like when they were little, and, your arms were like when they would come running up to you, and you're like, "Hey, that is the energy that I give myself in my good morning to myself," And so I think that it's just so important to acknowledge that although our bodies are getting older, although our minds are getting wiser, and the point of life is to live it and to get older, that there is a part of us that is, and I don't want to say stunted like it's a bad thing, but that is still so young and so youthful. And they have been backburnered our whole lives. And so there's something so beautiful about just acknowledging that version of us. And you would be so surprised how much lighter you feel going through the day just being kind to yourself. So like I have this right here. I have it in the front of my computer and I love to carry it around. It's just a picture of me when I was a little baby. Just to remind me that the eyes that I'm looking back to in the mirror, those were with me. Like those are mine when I was a baby. And so just knowing that compassion, that love, that kindness, that warm embrace, it's going to go to me first.
Excellent. So, rapid fire, let's wrap this up. One perspective
Okay.
shift that changes everything if applied properly.
One perspective shift. So it's actually more of a thought process, and we've already talked about it. The perspective is that my emotions, my thoughts, and my behavior are three completely separate entities, right? But that they happen synergistically at the same time. So if I can go in order, what am I feeling? What am I thinking about what I'm feeling? And then how am I behaving because of that? That can completely change everything, regardless if you're at the checkout line and you're upset that it's not going fast enough. And the story loop that you're telling yourself is, I have to be here and I have to be there. And the way that I am showing up is hostile because you're going to know that I'm mad, right? Or if it is on the complete opposite and you are walking into a room and you're like, okay, let's turn it on. What am I feeling? Pressure. What am I doing? I'm going to put on my best face. And how am I behaving because of that? I'm going to get everybody to like me. Performance, right? And so just shifting your perspective. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And how am I showing up in the world?
What's one practice that blends strength and awareness?
Meeting yourself right where you're at and understanding your intention. And so when you want to make a choice, before you make that choice, understand that you have an intention for the outcome, right? And so if you want a strong body, the intention is self care and to work out and eat well. And so before you eat that cheeseburger, eat it. But also be completely aware that you are doing that not because you don't care about yourself, but because you care about balance, right? You're not striving for perfection. You're striving for being healthy, body, mind, and soul. And so that cheeseburger that you're eating is because you have the freedom of choice and you trust yourself that you're going to get back out there tomorrow. It's not because you earned it. It's not because you're a failure. It's because it looks good and you want to eat it.
One question listeners should ask themselves this week.
One question they should ask themselves this week. Can I be a statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
I really encourage everyone to say hi to themselves inside of their mind and then ask themselves, which one am I? The one that heard it or the one that said it? And then make the statement, you are neither, you are the one that observed it.
Excellent. Shelbie, thank you so much for joining us. This is the work that changes
Thank
everything.
you.
And it's not because our lives get easier, but because you meet it differently. Strength without awareness is going to break you. Awareness without action stalls you. But discipline is rooted in self-trust, and action is guided by intention. That's real leadership. So today, if this episode has resonated with any of our viewers, please share this with someone. Share this with someone who you think needs to hear Shelbie's message of self-trust and awareness of self. Shelbie, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Until the next time, folks, thanks for joining Iron and Intention. Have a good day.